Hi you guys, this is Jamie with Whatever's Clever Boutique, and thank you for coming back today for another Tumblr tutorial. Today we are going to work with some fun 6x6 sheets from 311 Co. She sells some super pretty vinyl, and this stuff goes on like butter. It is so amazing. So we're going to use some 12-ounce shorties from what used to be the Steel Magnolia, which is now the Tipsy Magnolia. And their website will be launching on, well, I shouldn't say a specific date yet. It's not entirely sure, but hopefully sometime next week. So there I took my all-in-one tool from Cami Page Boutique and drew lines down the tumblers because initially I was going to just do split tumblers with these pieces of vinyl. And then I decided I was going to play around and try some different designs. So for that first one, we're just going to do your standard V. And for this second marbly one, I'm actually going to do a V, but have it be reversed on either side. So I'm going to take one of the little small V's and put it right there on the bottom and then on the top of the other side. So it almost creates like this swirl type effect. And then with the last one, we're going to go ahead and use that line that we drew and we're just going to do a standard split for that camo print. Now to apply the vinyl, we are going to cut a little piece of that backing off to create a little hinge for us, and then we're going to go ahead and smooth that vinyl down with our Bowen Big Squeegee, which is absolute life when it comes to laying vinyl. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim off any of that excess on the top. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with each of our triangles as well, or our V's, if you will. So I positioned them accordingly so that they covered that line I put there initially for the half splits. So just if you make that mistake like myself, or if you change your mind like I do all the time, you just want to be sure to cover that up. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with our little V's. And when I go to apply the second one on the bottom, I actually set it on my table to be sure that it's straight, and I make sure that it's lined up opposite from the other side that we laid. And this vinyl is super forgiving. You can pick it up, you can reposition it, and it doesn't tear, it doesn't stretch. It's so awesome. So now we are going to go ahead and take our painter's tape, and we are going to take tape. Wow, talking is hard today. We are going to tape off our vinyl so that we can go ahead and apply our paint and glitter. Once we get all of the vinyl taped off on our tumblers, we're going to go ahead and start decorating. For the camo print, I'm going to take my Papa Color paint, which is Old Army Green, and I'm going to go ahead and paint that exposed tumbler. And again, I always use prep tumblers. I absolutely love them. I shouldn't say always. Most of the time I use prep tumblers. I just love not having to sand. I love not having to spray paint. It just makes the world so much easier for me. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 coats of this so we can get a good base coat of paint. And on this second one, I'm going to use Raw Sienna from Arteza. And go ahead and paint in all of that exposed tumbler. And then for our cute little dainty flowers tumbler, we're going to use Lamb's Wool from Papa Color Paint. And again, I did do 2 coats of each one of those paints. all of the glitters that we're going to use today are from Peachy Olive Glitters. For this tumbler, we have French Press, Chewy, and Jitters. And don't mind my dirty hands, I got paint all over them. And I'm going to use epoxy method today. I will say I got way too much epoxy on this tumbler, so here I am trying to kind of scrape as much of it off as I can. You just need a very, very small amount. And now we are going to do a 3-color ombre. On the top, I'm going to use that Jitters, and I'm just going to go right across that rim. For the bottom, I'm going to use French Press, and same thing, I'm just going to kind of lay out the glitter right along the bottom. And then we're going to go ahead and take our Chewy, and that's going to go in the middle. And now I'm going to take the Chewy and I'm going to kind of tilt my tumbler so I can start creating that ombre effect. And now we're just going to go back and forth with all of our colors, just slowly building up that coverage. This color combo was so perfect. They ombre'd so beautifully together, so maybe make note of this combo. Now we're going to go ahead and remove that painter's tape just so that we don't have any paint potentially pull up if we let it dry completely. We just really don't want that, and you especially don't want your epoxy to dry. So now this tumbler, we're going to use Briar Rose and Chantilly for the glitters, and this one gave me a really hard time, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how I troubleshooted this tumbler throughout the tutorial. So we're going to start as normal. I was planning to ombre these two. It was going great, but my Briar Rose was acting a little bit funky. I don't know if I got moisture in the bottle or what was happening. I should have realized and just not tried to ombre with it, but I did, and it did not work very well. So it was almost coming out in clumps. So it was not ombreing very well for me. So I kept going back and forth, really trying to build the coverage, and I just could not get super great coverage. So we're going to combat that later. But I'll show you the process. I'll show you how my mind works. I'll show you how we fix things. There's no, transparency here. I'm going to show you all the things. Same as the other one, we're going to remove that tape so that epoxy and paint don't dry on there. And just let's ignore that ombre. Now for our last tumbler, I'm going to go ahead and get that epoxy on our painted sections of the tumbler. And then for this one, I'm going to use Athena and Goddess, both from Peachy Olive Glitters. And I made a mistake here, so I went ahead and took a glove, and the Goddess was supposed to go on the top. So I just kind of spread that into the epoxy just to make it really sticky again. And then I went back in with the Athena and just kind of covered that area back up with the chunky glitter. And the purpose of this ombre, the colors aren't different. So these are two of the same color glitters. The cuts are just chunky, and then the Goddess is fine. So Athena is the chunky, Goddess is the fine. And we're just going to kind of ombre those two together, going from the fine and building up into the chunky glitter. And then I do take the Goddess as well and put that along that bottom rim. It just is going to make epoxying so much easier than putting the chunky glitter along that bottom. And because they're the same color, you won't even notice. So that's kind of what I did to combat the epoxy, sanding, all of that. Because we use chunky glitter for this one, we're going to go ahead and wrap our tumbler in some parchment paper and really press down that glitter really well, and that will make our epoxying so much easier. Once we get that all laid down, we're going to go in and remove our tape. And I really like how this one turned out. So I'm excited to try and use this vinyl method again. But these 6x6 sheets from 311 Co. are so perfect for this size tumbler. Now we're going to go in after all of our epoxy is cured, and we are going to seal all of those tumblers with a layer of glitter glue from the Crystalac company. Once that glitter glue dries, we're going to go in with 2 coats of KS Resin Liquidy Split Ultra UV Fast Set Epoxy. And I went ahead and did 2 coats just to be sure that the tumblers were really smooth and ready to go on to our next steps. Now, again, we're just going to ignore that ombre. And to combat this, I actually took this really pretty transfer from Southern Belle Glitter, and I'm just going to put that right over the top of that glittered section. So it's almost like it's got that floral waterfall effect going on. And I go ahead and just trim off that excess and any of that transfer that gets on the vinyl section, which I don't want to have any transfer on. You can just take your X-Acto knife and scrape it right off. We just go ahead and trim off that excess transfer, and then I decided to lay that little flower that was still left on the backing over on that corner where you could see a bit of that glitter. And I really like how this turned out. So it was a happy mistake, but that's how I combated the horrible ombre that I did. This is some nail tape from Amazon, and I'm just going to create the seam with the vinyl instead of the glitters. And then I'm going to go back in with a thinner nail tape that's like almost like a champagne color, and I'm just going to go over that green that we had applied prior. Now for our camo, I have this really pretty silhouette scene from AB Design Co. And I went ahead and cut the excess off. And then I went in and just laid it across the base of the entire tumbler. So it's going to kind of bring that glitter and vinyl all together and make it to where it's not necessarily a split, because I mean it is a split, but it's not going to be a dramatic harsh line split because we're going to have this seam that goes throughout the entire tumbler. And just like the vinyl, we cut off a little piece of that backing and then just press that down all the way until we get to the end, where I kind of had to trim out a tree a little bit, but you end up not even being able to tell. Then we go ahead and pop any of those air bubbles that may be underneath that clear cast. And then for our gold and turquoise tumbler, I just took a little piece of like metallic brown nail tape and outlined each of those turquoise sections. Now for the decoration on this tumbler, I went ahead and took these cow spots from Banff Custom Creations, and I just cut them out into little sections and even some individually, and I just placed them sporadically throughout the gold part of this tumbler. and I love how it turned out. And once we get all 3 of our cups decorated, we're going to go ahead and go in with one more coat of our KS Resin Liquidy Split Ultra UV Epoxy. Another little mistake I made, I was so focused on fixing that ombre that I totally forgot to apply the transfer on the front side or the vinyl side of this tumbler. So we just went ahead and did it now. And then we're going to go in with this deer head that I found on Creative Fabrica, and we're using Tech Wrap Craft vinyl, and we're going to put that right on the glittered side of our tumbler. Take that same champagne nail tape that we used on our little floral tumbler, and we're going to put that just right along the bottom where the end of our vinyl, or our, I guess it was clear cast decal, met up with the glitter. And now we are going to go in with our final coats of epoxy, and I went ahead and did some really cute glitter booties on these. This tutorial is a bit long, so I'll link below some tutorials where I show you more in depth how to do glitter booties, but these ones did turn out super cute. And of course I used my acrylic tags for Mizzy Doodles. For the camo tumbler, I used Chewy for the center and Jitters for the outside. I used Gentleman for the outside and Andrews for the inside of the turquoise tumbler, and Aurora for the center, and the Swamp for the outline or outside of our floral tumbler. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I have been loving 311 Co's vinyl. These little 6x6 sheets are so fun to work with, super easy. Create a perfect half split for these short tumblers from the Tipsy Magnolia. And it was just fun to kind of branch out and try something a little bit different. I don't do a lot of vinyl work on short tumblers. So yeah, and coming up with that different little design there on the left with our cow print tumbler, I really like that. I'm excited to try that on a bigger tumbler too. But if you guys enjoyed the tutorial, feel free to like, subscribe, hit that bell button if you want to be notified of any future tutorials. And of course, everything that I used will be listed and linked down in the description box below, as well as my socials, my website where you can buy these tumblers, as well as my new makers support group. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week.